Hey, it's Carrie.
And Ashley.
We welcome you to the Self-Care Cafe. We are both health professionals and moms and nature lovers and food lovers and love helping women get over dieting and just start living. We think that talking about bodies and perfect bodies and dieting is just boring.
Did we put you to sleep there, Carrie?
Yes. So if you are ready to ditch dieting and get to living and talk about more important things, then you are in the right place. We don't put shame and guilt on the menu here. You don't even have to tip us.
Nope.
Come hang with us. The advice is free. We want to have a bunch of girlfriends to just hang out with and get real with. And it's time to start living, ladies.
Hey, Carrie. Every time. We're just so excited to see each other.
I know. It's actually been a while because summer and life and
yes, lots of life things for sure. But
yes.
What's on the menu for today?
Well, I thought it'd be cool to discuss how this whole idea of weight loss versus other things, like, do you really need to lose weight to be healthier?
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, because I just think it's interesting. I'm like we were talking before, I'm seeing more and more health professionals who are pivoting their own mindsets, who have always been in the, traditional way of, you focus on your weight and your diet and, that's how you do it. Who are realizing that through all these years, what we've been doing just is not working anymore.
Finally, right?
Well, not anymore. It never worked.
It never worked.
It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so great because I think that's one of my biggest frustrations, being a provider who focuses on the health at every size approach or weight neutral or weight inclusive care. And we'll talk about what that means during this episode. Is there's all this information out there. Like, I didn't learn this in school, and I've come across it during my practice, during my career. And there's so much evidence out there that shows us that our normal healthcare system, like Carrie was just saying about focusing on weight for health, just isn't working. And it's been around for a long time. And it's been my biggest frustration that why haven't more providers figured this out? Because they see the same patients. Like, some patients have the same provider for so many years. And most of the time, people are ending up in that weight cycling or that yo-yo dieting where they're losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight. How come we haven't had that aha moment to have everybody kind of change their tune about this?
I think it's because they blame the patient.
130%. Ding, ding,
right?
Ding.
Like, it's not the method. It's the patient that's to blame,
right?
Which is just so bogus.
Right.
And it's like, wake up. It's time to see what is really going on. The way we've been doing it, and you and I have known this, and other people in our field have known it for years. But it's been a small minority of us, right? That's
Right.
like, wait, this isn't. And besides the fact of also where we're both in tune with eating disorders, how focusing on that weight causes disordered eating also.
Right.
And eventually could lead to eating disorders. So it's just been pretty messed up.
For sure. So I think what we'll end up talking about today is kind of like why the system that we've been following isn't necessarily working.
Right.
And then talk about things that actually do help our health without focusing on, intentional weight loss. Does that sound right to you, Carrie?
Yes, for sure.
And whatever else we come up with along the way.
Yeah. And before we hopped on, we looked up, because this isn't just us throwing out our opinion here, right? This is evidence-based. The studies on that show, because like we've said before, yes, dieting, you will most likely lose weight. when you're dieting, but the whole point is you have to keep dieting
Right.
to keep the weight off.
Yeah.
And if dieting was easy and sustainable, everyone would be doing it. And
And we'd all be maintaining our weight loss. We'd all be
right.
happy, right? Like the idea that dieting leads to weight loss, which makes us happy because our bodies have changed,
Mm-hmm.
is not based in facts because you can't diet. Well, I guess you can diet forever, but how miserable is it?
Oh,
Um, and
I mean,
so,
we've been around those people, right? Like we know
right.
people who are
Yeah,
just caught in that diet cycle, and it's sometimes, I'll be honest, hard to be around them
for
because
sure.
that's their focus.
Yeah.
That's 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 their it's an obsession.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of joy for them, I feel like. There's no spontaneity around food. Um, and some people are dealing with this well into their, older age of 70s, 80s.
Yeah,
And I think we have to stop and ask ourselves, like, is what we're doing something we want to be doing when we're 80 years old?
right,
Because
right.
I think that there's so much more like better things that we can do and spend
Mm.
our time on.
Well, and you have to also realize when you are dieting, you are not getting the nutrients that you need.
Right.
I have seen people who do the point system, and you can fill up on quote unquote empty calories, and hit your points and not be getting the nutrients that you need to support your
Exactly.
body for your health.
Hmm.
Um, and like I said, I've seen it. I've seen people do it.
Yeah.
Pass up, a meal to have, cake or
Right.
yeah, it's maddening.
Yeah. And a similar example is like I've seen a lot of clients after like weight loss surgery or bariatric surgery. And yes, they're losing weight, but they look like hell. Like their
Mm,
skin color is like grayish. Their eyes are really tired looking. They don't feel good.
mm.
Is that healthy?
Right,
I don't
right.
I don't
And
think
how
so.
many also I've heard people say, "Well, my doctor put me on this diet or but told me not to
Mm,
exercise."
that's such a
Um,
big red flag.
yeah. It's like, okay, because they'll lose more weight. That's what they're being told. You'll lose more weight if you don't exercise, at least for the first 8 weeks or whatever crazy number, whatever they come up with, right? The reason you're losing more weight is if you don't exercise is because you're losing muscle.
Right,
And is that a good thing? You don't
right.
want to lose muscle. That's what keeps you strong and moving and easily, and flexible and
Yeah. So like if you've been dieting in the past or have tried dieting at all, if you ever come to that point where you're like really tired or feeling kind of like weak, I guess. Like a lot of
mm,
people that diet feel weak, and that's exactly why, because you're not getting the nutrients, like Carrie said, that you need to sustain your body to do what it needs to do. So it's making you tired because it's not functioning appropriately. And
right,
then if you're feeling weak, it's because your body's breaking down your muscles for fuel.
right, right. And people don't realize that. Like your body, if you're not eating enough calories, your body will start breaking itself down.
Yes.
And I've experienced that myself.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's a horrible place to be, but so
Yeah.
many are, and then that cycle.
Yeah. And
Um,
so, what part makes it a cycle? Like, why do we all feel like we're getting benefits when we're doing this kind of
hmm, that's a good
behavior?
question.
Yeah. And I feel like it's because when we're so focused on health improvements, but they're so extreme that they can only be short term, we're
Hmm,
only having those benefits for that time, like we said, that we're focused on it. And
right,
then the things we're doing aren't sustainable. So we go back to doing whatever it was we were doing before. And when we do that, we actually lose the health benefits that we gained. So it definitely is that cycle. Like
Mm,
We get the benefits because we're eating more fruits and veggies, or maybe we are working out or whatever it might be.
mhm.
But then when we stop doing those things, we lose the health benefits that we saw, like maybe your blood pressure was lower, maybe your blood sugar was lower, or whatever it might
Mhm.
be. They're all so short term that they go away.
Right. And they're also credited to the weight
Weight
loss,
loss. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Versus really, it's probably more because your health habits, you were paying attention to your health habits. It's because study after study shows you can start getting regular physical activity and decrease your blood pressure, decrease your
Yes.
cholesterol, manage your blood sugar without losing a pound. Now, you may lose some weight, but also you have to remember, if even if you're losing body fat, but you're exercising and maintaining or adding muscle, the scale's not going to change as much. And yet your body is healthier.
Exactly.
So that's the whole thing with it's your health habits that matter.
Right.
And when we're so focused on the weight and being obsessed with what we're eating, and it just there's all kinds of garbage associated with that we're going to get into.
Right.
But I'm wondering, do you want to explain what weight neutral care is,
Sure.
Sasha?
Yeah. And I think I use the terms weight neutral and weight inclusive. They're a little bit different, but for the sake of today, we'll call them the same thing. So, weight neutral care is basically what we're talking about is we're not going to focus on our weight in our like quote unquote treatment plan for your health. We're going to focus on the things that we can do to improve our health. Like if we're not very active, let's maybe work on our activity, stress, sleep, our nutrition, all of those things. But we're going to talk about them in a way that has nothing to do with our weight.
Right. Right.
Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yes, absolutely. It's like you're going to take the weight, the dieting, weighing yourself off the table
Right.
and focus instead on the behaviors,
Hmm.
which to back up a little bit, for a lot of people, your behaviors also need a mindset change, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
and that's where a lot of some of the issues come in with not making these behaviors longer term.
Right. And that's
Because
exactly what Carrie and I do with our clients, right? Like
right.
most of the time we talk about, well, what behaviors can we work on to improve your overall health? But also, what's the mindset shift that has to happen? And honestly, in some sessions for their nutrition, we don't even end up talking about food all that much. Like we talk more about, well, when are you hungry? Or what's your schedule look like for eating? Or what's your stress? Or what's your sleep? Or what's your budget? Like, we don't
Mhm.
talk about, oh, well, you should have a half a cup of this or a half a cup of that. That's not something that we do most of the time.
Right. And one reason, when let's say you change your habits, but they're focused on weight loss, um, when you stop losing weight, a lot of times the habits go out the window. It's like, well, this is dumb, this isn't working, right?
Right.
So because your focus is weight and weight loss, those habits don't stick. You haven't done that the mindset work to have them change and realize it's a plethora of benefits that the health habits have. And why don't we start with the first health habit, like activity, right? Physical
Right.
activity.
Yeah.
Um, the scientists, it's like over 70 benefits to regular physical activity
That don't
besides
include anything to do
that
with your weight.
don't include weight loss. So there's so many other things, physical activity, and we're going to talk about these other health habits. Will help you sleep better. It helps decrease your stress. It has been shown to help reduce depression, improve depression, improve or reduce anxiety.
Mhm.
Um, it reduces blood pressure. It improves your cholesterol level. It helps you manage blood sugar. I mean,
Right.
it's just
On and on.
yeah, you're stronger, your heart is stronger, your lungs get stronger. I mean, it just, yeah, there's so many benefits. Your they're finding even like thinking better. So even people, there have been studies if you have ADHD,
Mm.
if you get up in the morning and you exercise and then do your work, there's studies that show that the chemicals in the brain help you focus better.
Interesting.
There's so many benefits to getting regular physical activity. um if you but some people have a block against physical activity, right? So whether it's your history with it, you were forced to do it, like I've seen a lot of military, because they were, in the
Mm.
military, obviously you can stay fit. And then people get out and it's like, I'm done with that. I don't want to do anything to do with it again. Or maybe you had, as a child in phys ed, you had some bad experiences, or, whatever it is, it's working on overcoming those beliefs about it.
Yeah, and finding different ways to do it, right? Because like Carrie was just saying, the beliefs that we have about it, like exercise only counts if
Right.
XYZ,
If I'm at the gym.
right? That's not true. And so we
No.
have to figure out, okay, if this is my belief about activity or exercise, well, how can I challenge that and maybe think outside the box a little bit for myself and find a way to do something that is more enjoyable?
Right. And also going against the grain, like if you're being told, maybe it's your doctor, well, you need to join the gym. That'll keep you, because you pay when you pay for the membership,
Mm.
you'll go. Well, I'm here to tell you, I've known people who I said, whatever, I pay it up front, and then
Yeah,
they
some
just
people have gym memberships coming out every month and they've never even set foot in there.
exactly. So it's you got to figure out what works for you. Do you like being outside? Then go outside and get your physical activity. Do you like being in groups? Some people like that social part of it. Then, join classes and things like that. Do you just you hate the gym environment, but you've got space in your house, and you don't need a lot of equipment, if anything, really.
Right.
There's so many different. That's another belief that people have. Oh, I've got to have all this equipment to do it. No, you don't. I mean, your body's enough. There's so many exercises you can do with just body weight,
Yep.
even. So, all kinds of obstacles that people run into with physical activity, but so many different, like as you said, think outside of the box. There's just so we've been so conditioned to believe that it's got to be one way.
Right.
And there's just so many ways. There's got to be something that you enjoy. And again, I've said this before at the beginning, when if you have been more sedentary, starting to move more might not feel that great, especially if you've got arthritis or some sort of an autoimmune that affects joints. It might suck at first. It might not feel great, but I usually recommend first, before even starting more formal activity, is just start looking for opportunities to move more. you know Parking, I mean, it sounds just so I feel like I'm redundant, so but parking further away from the store, park at the other end of the parking lot, so that you just have to walk a little bit further.
Mhm.
And starting with things like that we've talked about before, like taking laundry, right? And instead of carrying the whole basket upstairs, just take one small pile or an item or whatever, and so you have to go back and forth more often. Same thing with groceries.
Mhm.
um, so just really simple ways that maybe seem a little silly, but just starting to move a little bit more. If you have a desk job, get up, set an alarm so that every 30 minutes you have to stand up, and at least stand up and stretch, or like I recently got a stand-up desk. So it's a lot easier. I'm not sitting as much. And even while I'm working, standing up, I can do some, squats and heel raises and leg lifts. I mean, it sounds silly, but think outside the box and get creative with it.
Yeah, I for sure. And I think that whole like challenge your beliefs, like what's
Mhm.
really holding you back from doing exercise,
Yep.
and be truthful with yourself on that and kind of get
Yes.
to the bottom of it, explore that and decide or figure out like what is keeping me from doing this, because is it like I know I should, and like we always say, don't should all over yourself, like because everyone's telling you you need to, that's just going to turn your brain off to doing it anyways, right? Like
Yeah.
that
Like,
rebel.
are you rebelling against it on
Mhm.
some way, you know, like
Right.
and we do that, right? We can have that rebelliousness, that we kind of dig our heels and like, no, I'm not going to do it just because you're telling me I should be.
Right.
And just kind of owning your attitude and owning your beliefs. It's like, okay, this is kind of silly. I'm just hurting myself. It's not doing me any good.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
and setting like realistic, not necessarily goals maybe, but like what's your reason for wanting to do it? I've had
mm,
so many people be like, well, I want to be able to get up and down off the floor with my grandkids to play with them.
mhm,
Or my daughter really likes hiking and I really want to be able to go with her.
mhm.
Or, really like bare bones, why do I want to do this? I want to
Yes.
improve my blood sugars. I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing your why. And that's where that 7 layers deep goes, where you might say, like, initially, some people are like, well, I want to lose weight, right? Or, well, I want to be able to do the 5K.
Or I want to
Okay,
start exercising.
right. Why?
Right.
And whatever your answer is to that, well, why is that important? Like, keep going deeper and deeper. I had a 13-year-old girl that I worked with, and I asked her why she wanted to work with me. And I can't remember her first answer. I think it was for sports or something, get in shape for basketball. And as I kept going deeper and deeper, we got to her answer was because I want to, when I'm an adult, I want to be able to be healthy enough to support my family well.
Oh,
Like, this
yeah.
is a 13-year-old,
That's a big thought for
that
13.
is a big thought. So it was just so cool to see her get to that level.
Yeah,
And so that's a really simple exercise. Just going deeper with your why
definitely.
from the service one. Well, what about stress? There's
Oh,
another managing or controlling or mastering your stress,
yeah.
dealing with your stress. How does stress affect? Why does that matter?
Well, stress affects our whole body. Like all of
Mm,
the systems in our body, stress can mess it all up for you. And
mm,
I think it's important to realize that, like back in caveman days, I talk about caveman days all the time, but stress is an important thing for our body because it helps us like run away from bears or whatever in
mhm,
caveman days. And I think now that we have less of those like primal problems, we
mhm,
have more chronic stress like finances or relationships, or it's more of the mental load almost kind of stress. um so stress is there for us for a reason, that biological like keep us safe
yep,
stress,
yep. The
and it's
fix
shifted a
and the
little
fight
bit.
or flight.
Yeah, exactly, or freeze maybe.
Yep.
um so yeah, so this chronic stress that we have now um increases our cortisol level, which is a stress hormone, which signals our body to kind of put things on hold, and it inflames our body. So stress causes inflammation all over, which causes different problems.
Yeah, the studies, just there's a ton of studies that show that systemic inflammation in our bodies, um, when that's like at the cellular level, say that 10 times fast. Um, at that deeper level inside our bodies, that inflammation is now they're saying causing, a bunch of chronic conditions, from, arthritis to heart disease to diabetes to cancer to autoimmune.
Right.
So like Ashley said, it affects every system in your body. And it's that chronic stress. So, like she was saying, that acute stress. So if there's a fire in your house, that's an acute stressor, right? Like, you're not going to just sit there. You're
I
going to
hope.
do what you have to get out of the house. But this long-term chronic, that's that stress that eats away at you,
Mm-hmm.
is what is causing, this inflammation and the negative health consequences. Um, and one exercise I like to do with clients or in workshops is, um, think of an umbrella and put what is stressing you out in that umbrella, and then go deeper and take what specifically about that stressor is really stressing you out. So like work is always an easy one to use. So if you say, well, work stresses me out, okay, well, what specifically about work is stressing you out? So, is it a coworker? Is it the hours? Is it the pay? Is it the commute? Is it your boss? Is it the work itself? What exactly is stressing you out? And then what can you do about it? So, do you need to take action? Is there some action you need to take? Do you need to, if it's a coworker, do you need to go to your supervisor and discuss it? Or, do you need a raise? Like whatever it is, what action can you take? Or maybe you need to change your perception of it. And this is like kind of the one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? So what stresses one person out, another person might let roll off their back. So it's like, how are you reacting to it? Or your perception of it, sorry. Is this really something, some people are not okay with just being okay. Like some people have to always have something to be stressed out over.
Right.
Right. So is this something that you are making maybe a bigger deal of than needs to be? And then do you need to change your reaction to it? Because sometimes remember, we've talked about that reaction versus response. So are you constantly throwing out those flares, like that emotional knee-jerk reaction? How can you change your response to it? Maybe the coworker is reacting to your reaction.
Right.
Versus if you change your response, they may change theirs, right?
Right.
So it's just it gets deeper, a little bit deeper. I feel like, of course, there's stress management, that deep breathing and all that, which we also need.
Definitely.
But when you're only doing that and not getting to the deeper source of the stress and rooting it out, those become over time more like a band-aid to
Right.
it.
Yeah, it's kind of like what can I do in the moment
Yeah.
is deep breathing or something like that. But we have to figure out what is causing this underlying all the time stress, or else we're just always going to have it.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, what about sleep? There's
Oh,
another health habit is sleep.
yeah. I feel like I think I mentioned this on one of the other episodes, but you know, talking with clients about their nutrition or their mindset around nutrition or health, we talk, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, but I never sleep. And I'm like, oh, well, let's talk about that because that's going to be something to consider with your health because
Mm-hmm.
sleep is so important. Like, our body needs time to rest and recover, and rest is kind of a different thing than actual sleep. Because when we actually sleep, it sets a lot of things off in motion, right? Like our muscles can recover, our memories get stored from that day, a couple days ago, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Lots of things happen when we're actually asleep, and we do need quite a bit of sleep. And the people that say I'll sleep when I'm dead, like Carrie says, I think it's
I'm
one of
probably
her,
going to be dead sooner.
right? Exactly. And not getting enough sleep kind of gives us that inflammation or stress response in our
Mhm.
body, which we just talked about. And
Mhm.
so getting enough, so like how long are we sleeping, but also like how well or the quality of our
Yes.
sleep is important too, because if we're waking up every 3 hours or
Mhm.
whatever it might be, we're
Or
not.
sleep, yeah, sleep apnea, like I'm dealing with that.
Mhm.
And cannot get used to the CPAP. So those commercials with the CPAPs are hilarious, but they're true. It's like, so going to the next step with an oral appliance for that. But it's so important. Like if your partner, for instance, tells you that you're snoring, get that checked out, because you could have sleep apnea, or if you're stopping breathing while you're sleeping, like those things, it's really, really important to get checked out for that, because it causes, like Ashley said, besides inflammation, the sleep apnea, like the obstructive sleep apnea, causes heart issues
Mm-hmm.
as well. So it's important to get that checked out. And when you're what studies show too, like the um lack of sleep, like drowsy driving,
Yes, yes.
right, is
Well, and
causing.
just mental fog in general, not
Yeah.
even just with driving, but if you're not getting enough sleep, and again, I think we talked about this in one of the other episodes recently, is we're not clear. And then after a while of having the same feeling all the time, it just becomes our new normal,
Right.
which is really interesting to think about because we're just dealing with stress, with poor sleep for
Yeah,
years.
it's a vicious cycle,
It really
right? Because
is. And
when
so
you're
we,
not getting enough sleep or enough quality sleep, you're more stressed out. And it also affects relationships. Like
yeah.
when you're stressed out and exhausted and you don't feel well, you also tend to be snappier
Yep.
and more
Or
reactive.
maybe you're also not eating enough because you're dieting.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Or you're
compounds.
wondering, like, why am I constantly craving like simple carbs, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is not a lack of willpower. It is a simple physiological reason, because your brain's like, hey, we need some energy, and that's going to
That's
give
right.
you the quickest energy.
Yeah.
So it's a simple, you're not weak, you're not lacking willpower. It
Mm-hmm.
is just a simple biological response in your body that's just needs energy. So which can bring us to the next one, nutrition.
Da-da-da-da.
Da-da-da-da, you're on, registered dietitian.
Woohoo. Yeah, and so I feel like, and we've talked about this a lot, but there's so many ways to think about nutrition with our health, right? Like we can talk about the really strict way that a lot of people are doing it. I'll save that for a few minutes, but ideally, nutrition has just a couple key things to it. It is not that difficult, but we make it so much more difficult than it has to be because we're always looking for the next best quick fix thing, right? But really, nutrition is all about patterns. Like, what are we doing on a weekish basis and variety so that we can get most of the nutrients that we need from our food. So, that's really pretty much it. Like eating enough for your body, eating foods that are generally healthful a lot of the time, but also leaving room for fun foods that you like,
Mhm.
and then getting that variety. And, I was just talking to a friend about this. I, as a kid, was like one of the choosiest eaters. I ate so much processed food, which probably drove my dad nuts because he was super into like organic gardening and had vegetables galore. We canned vegetables, so we had them all year long, and I barely touched them. And so nutrition is not as big of a deal as we think. Although fruits and veggies do give us all of those vitamins and nutrients that we need, so they do help our health. So that's something to consider too. Like if you aren't eating enough of some of the food groups, right? Like there's recommendations on how much we quote unquote should be eating of the food groups, and that's based on science too. And we don't have to feel guilty about not getting 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables in a day just because that's the recommendation, but they do help. And so start where you're at, right? Like if you're not eating any, adding one a day is awesome.
Yeah, and getting out of that all or nothing, right? Like Ashley said, start where you're at and gradually progress. The
Right.
other thing too, and we've mentioned this before, is that a serving size of fruits and vegetables isn't that big. It's certainly
Right.
not what, even sometimes I envision like, wow, that's it.
Right.
So it actually makes it easier though in the long run
Yes.
to get them in when you think, oh wow, that's not, I can do that. That's not very much.
Yeah, it's great. And I think, again, like the all or nothing, like those beliefs that we have, there's a lot of talk out in social media and media about like canned fruits and veggies not being quote unquote as good or they lose their nutritional value or whatever. But really, just have some fruits and veggies. Like, I'd
Mhm.
rather have you eat canned vegetables than not have any at all.
Right,
They're honestly not that much different.
right.
And some people can't really digest fresh fruits and veggies a lot. So canned and frozen are a really great option for a lot of people.
Yeah, like yeah, certain, like depending on your gut and your digestion. I know, like I can't do raw apples,
Hmm.
fresh apples, but I can do a little bit of cooked, because the cooking process breaks down some of that fiber.
Yep,
It just makes
exactly.
it easier on my gut to digest.
Hmm.
And the other thing that we could bring up in nutrition too is hydration.
Yes.
Is another, it can either be with nutrition or its own health habit
Yep.
too, that really makes a difference in your health and how you feel and how things work in your body. You know, digestion works better when you're well hydrated, and
Yep. Lots of things
um,
do. But
yeah.
again, we tend to turn it into like the all or nothing thing.
Mhm.
Or uh, I'm not doing enough, so I'm gonna have this unrealistic goal of like tripling it. And
Right,
then
right,
we can't sustain that because
right,
that's not where we're at. And so exploring like what is the hydration level that works for you, and do it in stages. So if you're only doing X amount of ounces per day, bump it up a little bit and see how that goes, or just figure out how much am I doing? Am I doing any?
right. Yeah, I mean, it's like Ashley said, like, and you're better off spreading out throughout the day rather than all of a sudden 3 o'clock in the afternoon you realize, oh, I haven't had any water today, and you start guzzling it, and
Right,
then you'd feel sick. I mean, that's not any good. It's You're better off, spreading out throughout the day. Sometimes I recommend to people, like Ashley said, get a baseline. How much are you drinking? And again, be honest with it. Like some people fill their water bottle up in the morning and then it just sits there.
right,
Right. So be honest with how much you're currently doing, and then just add a little bit to it. So if you're not doing any, start with, okay, well, could you do like half a cup an hour? Like literally a measuring cup,
yep,
of water. Could you do that, sip on that, or, drink it down, one of those every hour? And just, and progress from there. And keep it in mind that if you've been dehydrated, when you first start increasing your fluid intake, you're probably going to get bloated at first, and then eventually your body, over a week or two will start releasing it, and
right,
then yes, you will be in the bathroom more. But um getting out of that mindset too, with I don't want to constantly running to the bathroom, but over time that also will adjust,
right.
right?
And like getting into that habit too. So if you're just starting out, we have to keep it consistent for a little while to make it part of our routine or part of our habits. And so
Mhm.
it's easy to give up before that happens. So revisiting like why we're doing it, just like with
Right,
the activity.
right. And going back to all or nothing, we've talked about 4 to 5 health habits. You don't have to start with all of them.
Right. Please don't, in
Choose,
fact.
yeah, choose one. In fact, choose one that you feel like would be the simplest for you so that you have success with it. Which one would be the easiest to do at
Right.
first, and
Right.
get into that habit first.
Right. And then the last piece about like the health habits and nutrition especially is like not obsessing over it because
Mm,
we can turn anything into this all or nothing kind of thought process, and really being flexible with yourself and with why you're doing it like we just mentioned,
mhm.
because the more we obsess over it, like the deeper down the rabbit hole we go. And that's actually worse for our health than just kind of setting more realistic goals over a longer period of time.
Yeah, and it increases your stress. So you get into like this, you're trying to be, improve your health habits and improve your health, and you end up causing yourself more stress
Right. Which is
because
exactly the system that we're dealing with right now with
right,
dieting, with the intentional weight loss. That's exactly what happens. We say,
right.
okay, we need to make a change because of whatever thing that you're thinking or the doctor said to you or
Mhm,
whatever. And then we make these drastic changes, which
mhm.
stress us out. And then after a while, we stop doing it. And then we lose the health benefits that we might have gotten when we were doing it. And it just happens over and over and over again.
Yeah, and that becomes a cycle. Even if you're not focusing on your weight and
Right.
you're focused on like, oh, I got to change all this stuff at once, and you go great guns
Right.
and just burn out.
Yep.
It's like people, at the beginning of the year, I'm gonna exercise every day, and they, go to the gym 2 or 3 days, and they're so sore because when you exercise, beyond what your muscles are used to, you're gonna be sore, and then they can't move for 3 days, and they're like, oh, forget this, I'm done, right?
Yeah,
So it's
for
just
sure.
that vicious cycles we get ourselves into.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, a lot of people do it. And so it's that normalized mentality. Like we think this is what we're supposed to be doing,
Mhm.
which is really difficult because we don't hear about other ways to do things or they sound like ridiculous, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah, or
know.
if you're not doing it, all out, if you're not exercising, to the point of puking,
Right.
it
Then it
doesn't
doesn't
count.
count.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's just so
Yes.
silly. So
Yeah.
silly.
So I think we covered most of the things about the health habits,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But I
Yep.
think one other thing to keep in mind, and again, we've talked about this in one of the other episodes, is our genetics play a huge role in our health outcomes. And, you
Mhm.
know, we can certainly do the things that we've been talking about with our health habits. Um, and our genetics are still going to be a big piece
And
of our health, way
yeah,
more than I think most of us would even imagine, probably.
yeah, they definitely influence, right?
Yes.
I recently saw one of the OB nurses who was there during all my boys' deliveries, and with my first pregnancy, well, I had high risk pregnancies with all of them, but my first one I had severe preeclampsia,
Hmm.
and she said, you made me realize, like, because she goes, you're so healthy, like you were so healthy and everything, and I just realized like how much genetics can still kick in,
Yeah.
and with blood pressure and things like that, and it's true. I had this one of my aunts, she was always this tiny little petite thing, um and her cholesterol was high. she
Right.
ate she ate oat bran until it came out of her ears, you know and it would not go down. Of course, now this was back in the day when I don't think they were separating out,
Mm,
LDL, HDL, triglycerides
right.
and stuff, but and now we even know there's different kinds of LDL.
Right.
But still it wasn't coming down, and they put her on medication for it. But and that's the other thing too, right? Sometimes you can follow all the quote unquote rules, and that's not what we're talking about here, right? Like,
Right.
this is, you can seemingly do everything right, and still genetics can influence. Uh,
Exactly.
and it doesn't mean that you then just throw the towel in and say, well,
Right. Right.
this is dumb. It's not that at all. It's just that it's just part of your body.
Right.
And
And I see people like the cholesterol thing all the time. Like people are trying so hard to get their levels down. They're eating a vegetarian style meal pattern. They're exercising regularly. They're doing the things and their cholesterol won't come down. And then we have to get to that point of like, okay, I'm doing things that are reasonable to help this. And if I do more, it's going to be unreasonable for my mental health and even for maybe even my physical health, like joint health, etc., like obsessive eating, that kind of thing. At what point do we have to accept that our body is genetically inclined for this and
Mhm.
it just needs some extra help with a medication, for example. Like, it doesn't mean you failed, like Carrie
Right.
was just saying. It just means that our genetics aren't really helping us out.
Right. Right. And I am all for like natural health and doing what you can first, but sometimes you just, like Ash said, your body just needs a little bit more support. And that's where modern medicine, you know, thank God we have that too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, good old genetics.
Yes.
Well, this was a good conversation.
Yeah. And I think the gist of it, right, is like exploring what works for you,
Mhm.
figuring that out kind of slowly, because we don't want to make it this big drastic change like we talked about, because then the health benefits we might see when we stop doing it, they won't last.
Right.
And supporting your body, that's the big message.
Yeah.
Supporting your body with what works for you, what works for your schedule, your budget, your mental health.
Yes. Supporting, like, yes, your support your body and your mental health.
Yep.
And keeping in mind too, really try um to avoid allowing other people to influence. Like what works for them doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You have
Right.
a different genetic makeup. Um our bodies are all different. And even within the same family, what works for one person might not work for another. And it has to work for you, not just physically, but like Ashley said, like for your mental health too. So if exercising to the level that someone in your family is doing it at, you're like, no way.
Right.
you know, being careful not to fall into the trap, that comparison trap,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Because I think we get into the like this idea that so and so is doing this and it's working for them. So I'm going to try it, but then I'm a failure because it didn't work for me. That
Right,
self-blame, when I prefer us all to look at it as, oh, I tried that. I experimented with it, like I gave it my best shot, and that just wasn't for me. So I would like to try something different now.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome.
Yeah.
So the health habits that we went over, physical activity, stress, mastery, management, whatever you want to call it, controlling your stress, sleep, nutrition, hydration,
Yep.
and then those are the health habits, and then genetics influences our bodies.
Right. Yep.
Awesome.
Exactly. Great. Well, if you have any questions or comments, you can find us on social media. You can find us on the Spotify listening platform. They have like a little Q&A comment section. So you can find us there. All the links to everything are in the show notes at the bottom. So drop us a line and let us know what you want to hear more of or
I would love
what
to
you
hear from
like.
you.
Yeah, we would.
We're here for you.
That's right. All right. Well,
Awesome.
see you
Well,
next time.
see you next time. Love you, latte.
Love you, latte.